Good morning, everyone. Welcome to JMC Study Hub. This is Srishti Ghosh, and today we will be talking about communication audit. So let's see what we will be learning in today's class. In today's class, we will be going through what is communication audit, the goals of communication audit, the purpose of communication audit, the communication audit procedure, and the benefits of communication audit. So without a further ado, let's start today's class. But the first thing in our first slide is what is communication audit? By this time, all of you have gathered a broad idea about what corporate communication is with our previous lesson. So in corporate communication, we learned that it is about the internal and the external communication handling that goes on inside a particular organization. It is everything. It is about the management of communication inside the organization between the employees and the board of the directors, between different departments, between the customers or the clients and the stakeholders, investors, everyone. So that is corporate communication. Now, when I'm talking about communication audit, let's just break these two words into two parts. One is communication and other is audit. You already know what communication is. Now, when I talk about audit, audit is basically the internal inspection of any organization. So therefore, when we are talking about an internal inspection, we are talking about the audit. Now, this audit is happening, how it is happening with the help of communication. We are doing the audit with the help of communication, and we are auditing which counterpart? We are auditing the communication counterpart. So communication audit is essentially carried out by which department? Very important question. It is carried out by the corporate communications department. But there are organizations who actually considers in handling the communication audit part by other consultancies or by hiring employees from other consultancies, etc. So a communication audit is a comprehensive evaluation of an organization's ability to send and receive and share information with various audiences within the organization. This type of audit can be performed to evaluate an organization's external and internal communication effectiveness. So corporate communication basically handles the entire communication within the organization, right? And with its publics of the organization. But what communication audit is doing is this is a tool basically. Communication audit is basically a tool which is actually looking forward towards the areas that has the weaknesses inside the particular organization. For example, let's take an example that in an organization, there will be a mental health awareness campaign. But about this news, only a few departments are aware about this news, not everyone, because it is actually taking place on a Saturday morning, and everybody knows that after Friday they get the weekend. They get all the companies get weekend. So some people are aware about this mental health awareness program that is taking place on a Saturday morning, and some people are not aware about this type of program taking place on a Saturday morning. So what is done is a communication audit at the end of the month will be carried out, and they will look into the factor that why there was only a very few people present in that particular mental health awareness campaign. Is it because people are spending their weekends, or is it because some problem? Initially, it was found out that half of the people weren't aware about the news that was going around that there will be a mental health awareness campaign. People weren't aware about it because the communication was not proper inside the organization. So the weakness was taken or carried out by which particular element? That is the communication audit. So this type of audit can be performed to evaluate an organization's external and internal communications effectiveness. It can also look into the factors that whether the customer service is going well or not, whether people are addressing to the problems that are brought by the customers regarding their products or services. So the entire thing that a communication, it is basically about how a communication is handled through this entire audit. there can be a lot of crisis going on in the communication. In that point of time, communication audit needs to be done in order to get into the factor that where is the exact problem, where is the weakness of the company, because it evaluates the organization's ability to send, receive, and share information among the various audiences within the organization, whether each of the departments are communicating in a proper manner, whether each of the departments are communicating on the basis of their needs. For example, let's take the example of a news organization. If we take an example of a news organization, we will get to know that a news organization has a number of departments, right? There is the advertising department, there is the editorial department, there is the news desk, there is the art department. So the art department needs to work with the editorial desk. So in that case, there will be a proper internal communication between these two departments. But at the same time, when the communication audit is done half yearly or annually or even weekly, it is to be found that there is no communication between these two departments. There has been a total detachment between these two departments because they have been overburdened with their works. And when it comes to, collaborate and work in a proper, what should I say, in a proper harmony, there is something missing. So when there is something missing, this is the process. Communication audit actually brings down what is actually missing and reports to the corporate communication department. Then the corporate communication department will look for what are the remedies can be done in order to bridge the gap between these two departments. Right? Most of the time we see that there is a bridge between the employees and the board of the directors or the higher top management. So this is actually done by communication audit. I'm sure all of you have heard about the term audit and how it is done in all the companies. Now, this varies from the other companies. There are financial audits that goes through what are the problems in the financial part, but this is communication, whether there is a communication problem. Because see, any newspaper organization, any IT sector company, any financial company, everything depends on communication. All of them are having their respective audit criteria, but communication is the central of all the criteria, because whatever you are doing, whatever you are working, you are doing it on the basis of communication. So communication audit is a very, very important and a comprehensive evaluation of an organization's ability to send and receive and share information with various audiences within the organizations. And this type of audit can be performed to evaluate. It evaluates the organization's internal and external communication effectiveness. How much effective is that entire procedure? That is what we call as the communications audit. Next, we will move on to the goal of communication audit. So the entire process that I made you understand needs to have a particular goal towards the organization, because audits are not carried out without a particular goal, because that would mean a totally vague type of audit, right? So in order to achieve a goal, what can be seen? It is seen that the purpose of communications audit is to uncover the strengths and the weakness between the management, typically between the employees, customers, and other groups such as investors, the news media, and regulators and the legislative bodies, with the objective to improve future communications by developing a strategic plan through a series of recommendations and determine where a gap exists which needs to be bridged. The thing that I just made you understand. The purpose of a communications audit is nothing but uncover the strengths and the weakness. If there has been an achievement, it is going to look for what are the strengths, right? So for example, if a company has made 50 sales a day, that is an achievement. So they will look after the fact that how in the previous month the company achieved 50 sales, that will be considered as the strength. But at the same time, in the present month, when the company made only 15 sales, what was the weakness? So that particular strength will be applied in this month in order to achieve more sales. This is how the communication audit actually deals with the weakness and the strengths of a company. Because see, a company cannot always be having strengths. There are areas of weakness, there are areas of pitfalls. But at the same time, you need to find out what is the reason behind it. If you are not bringing out what is the reason behind it and you are not preventing it, it will lead to a major crisis. And you already know what it takes to handle an entire crisis. We have learned that in two parts of crisis management. In order to avoid the crisis, the communication audit needs to be done in a very specific manner and in a very strategic manner. Now, the word strategic I have used here is to make you understand that the entire thing is a plan. It will be going in a step by step. It will look for the strengths, it will look for the weakness, it will look for the opportunities, and it will look for the threats available in the entire arena. So it will look after the strengths and the weakness between whom? It will look between the management and typically its employees, customers, and other groups. Other groups like the investors, the media, the regulators. So it is not only talking about the relationship or the communication situation between the management or the employees, but also its customers, the news media, whether the company is having good relations with the media. Because see, maintaining a good relationship with the media people is very important, because once a crisis breaks out, it is only the media that can help you out of the place, because that is the only medium through which you can actually talk to your key publics, right? So it is talking about the news media, the legislative bodies. So how do you maintain a communication and why it is important? Because you need to maintain a good communication with the employees, of course, the customers as well. Those are the loyal customers who have been sticking to use your product or service for over years. And it is about maintaining a good relationship with the investors, people who have invested in your firm, in your company, in your agency. It is about the news media, how well you nurture yourself in front of the media, so they feel that your press release is of utmost importance and that this needs to be covered. And the legislative body, see, maintaining a relationship or a communication with the legislative body is very crucial. It is crucial because whatever happens in an organization, if there is any legalization problem, if there is a problem regarding law or ethics, it is only the legislative bodies that are going to make make the most out of it. So it is the objective to improve future recommendations by a strategic plan. Now, communication audit cannot take place without a proper strategic plan, and it is a step-by-step plan through a series of recommendations, because after the communication audit is done, it recommends that what should be done to the corporate communications. So corporate communications introduces the communication audit for two purposes: for finding out the strengths and the weaknesses, and in determining and getting the recommendations so that they can apply that and get over those gaps that actually exists, which needs to be bridged among the various departments, clients, employees in the organization and outside organization. So the basic goal that we come to know here about communications audit is basically to uncover the strengths and the weakness between the management. That is it. So when I talk about a financial audit in any other company, I am talking about the strengths and the weaknesses in their financial report. If there is any kind of money laundering, if there is any kind of money hacking that is going on, if a few bills are missing, that is the goal of a financial audit. But when I'm talking about communication audit, I am talking about the weakness that is that has bloomed because of the less communication, among the management, among the departments. So this is the basic idea about the goal of communication audit. And remember, communication audit is absolutely a strategic plan. Next, we will move on to the purpose of communication audit. The first thing that needs to be there between the organization and its key stakeholders, its customers, its organization, its employees, and everyone is the trust. The trust is the most important thing between one's organization and its key stakeholders, because the stakeholders are the people is the reason why the organization is standing on its feet even today, and is a key component to one's business that one must not share and grow. And one relies on the quality of one's communication efforts to build that trust. A very common example that I'm going to give you here so that you can understand the trust factor between the organization and its key stakeholders is that, let's just take an example of a boy and a girl, and they have been communicating on a daily and a regular basis. Okay, that's completely platonic in nature. They have been communicating on a daily basis with one another. But there has been some issue. For example, if the girl got a job, if the boy got busy with his works on a daily basis, the communication will be loosened. The trust factor that has been built with the communication, because of daily communication over the past 5 to 6 months, that will be start losing because there is no communication anymore. There can be one or two texts or messages or a phone call a day. That's it. Eventually, the phone calls will get lessened and they will not talk anymore. That will decrease the trust factor. Exactly that happens with the organization and the stakeholders. The stakeholders have invested in this particular company to build this organization for a purpose. They have placed their trust on this particular organization. Now, in return, they want the organization to communicate with them with their daily developments, with their weaknesses, with their problems, with every factor. Therefore, if there is no trust or communication that leads to trust between the organization and its stakeholders, do you think it is going to work out? It is, of course, not going to work out, because both the parties needs to have a balanced communication ability in order to enhance the trust factor. But once the communication factor is broken, the entire thing gets loosened. So a trust factor is very important. Next is to determine whether one's communications tools are working well or not. So communication audit's main purpose is to determine that whether the organization's communication tools are working well or not. That is, when there is for example, an organization brings out newsletter every week in order to address the upcoming projects, the ongoing problem, or anything through this particular newsletter. But this newsletter is written by a PR professional or an in-house corporate communication specialist who does not have good writing skills, right? So the person who has not been able to write properly, do you think he is absolutely the right person to be writing those newsletters which gets communicated or shared throughout the entire organization? Of course not. Therefore, there is a fault in that particular communication tool, newsletter being the major communication tool between the organization, between the top management and the employee management. Therefore, there should be a specialist or a person who knows how organization works, who needs to have a proper understanding about how this entire thing works. And that is why these newsletters or press releases or any in-house messages are basically done by a very by a very what should I say, non-professional, a person who knows how this entire thing works, because he knows that he was once an employee in that company. So he knows what are the expectations of the employees, right? So he will write the newsletter according to it. And the more you brush up your communication tools, the more important it gets among the employees, or the employees of the different of the different different departments. So one needs a communication audit to get the snapshot of one's organization's communication strategy, activities and programs. So communication audit actually helps in giving the snapshot of one's organization's communication strategies, activities and programs. So communication audit will be giving you a total idea about whether your communication tools are working properly or not, whether it is being accepted entirely by their publics or not, or by the employees or not, whether the activities conducted by the entire program is absolutely received by the employees or not. So apart from trust, looking after the fact that trust between the organization and its stakeholders are important, one thing should be another thing that should be determined by communication audit is to see whether the communication tools are working properly or not. Because without the communication tools, the communication is not even viable. Because the communication tools are the weapons of communication, are the weapons of communication among the individuals in an organization. So if the newsletter is writing about the daily achievements, or what about the new projects, if it is written in an absolute correct manner, that will actually help the employees to get a better understanding. It will work as a particular form of encouragement inside them that this thing is happening, or we need to work harder. So that is the second thing that needs to be determined. And a communication audit can be undertaken by the corporate communications team, or by an outside consultancy who are retained by the management to assess the company's communication effectiveness in accordance with what? In accordance with the business objective, comparing the company versus the competitors, and identify target audience perception and motivators. So just the factor that I told you in the very beginning of this slide, that this communication audit is usually carried out by the corporate communications team of any organization, that is the in-house organization. But there are organizations who actually goes to hires the outside consultancy team, which is done by the management, who thinks that the company will essentially help in determining the business objective, compare the company's competitors, and identify target audience perception and motivators. So what is the purpose of communication audit here is, either by corporate communications or by a consultancy, is to find out the business objective. The first and the foremost thing is to find out the business objective. Then compare the companies versus the competitors. One needs to compare what the competitors are up to. This is very important. This is very important in the case of public relations. It is very important in the case of advertising as well. You need to see that the products that are already there in the market, the company who are already there in the market, what are the developments they are doing? How can you be better than them? See, I am not talking about comparing your company to that of the other companies. You can be the owner, you can be the founder of HSBC, and that person can be the founder of Accenture. But both the companies do not have the same working policy. But at the same time, both of them are having huge global prints in the entire area. So when the entire thing is having huge global prints, one needs to see that what are the new trends that are used in this particular company, because those are the competitor companies, right? So you have to look into the areas of the competitors company. You are not only looking at the achievements of the competitors company, but you are also looking at their weaknesses, because if you are able to address those weaknesses through your company is going to have a better achievement, right? Because people will be seeing that whatever was missing from that particular company is being provided by your company. So this is how you need to compare the company, the competitor's company, with that of yours. It is not about, having an ego problem or the fact that they are doing better than ours, but to address the weakness of the competitor's company. And if on the other hand your company is having weakness after comparing, try to address that weakness, try to overcome or prevent that particular weakness with that of good things. So this is the comparison between the competitors and your company, and identifying the target audience perception, what the audience's perception are. See, the audience or the clients that are already with you, they are already aware about your product and what type of work you serve. But the audience who are not under your, area of work, those who are yet to be considered, turned into the consumers of your product, needs to be perceived well. You need to know what their perceptions are. You need to know what their requirements are, right? So this is the purpose of communications audit. It looks after the organization structure. It looks after the organizational culture. It looks after the communication assets and also studies the members involved. So the trust, the tools, the communication tools, then carried out by corporate communications or by consultancies to look after what? To look after the business objective, company comparison, and identifying target audience perception. And it looks after what factors? It looks after the organizational structure, the culture, the communication assets, and the members involved in it. So this was the total purpose of communication audit. Next, we will move on to the another part of the purpose of communication audit, and that is the resulting strategic position and corresponding communication plan is focused on achieving a strategic communication objective, that is whether they can be used to achieve a grand recognition. So in order to achieve a grand recognition in the society, a strategic position needs to be there and a corresponding communication plan. Because without a plan, a communication audit cannot take place, to be very honest. And it is focused in what? It is focused on achieving a strategic communication objective. That is a planned communication objective. That is whether they can be used to achieve grand recognition. See, every organization has its own brand name, and each of this brand will always look out for any strategic plan that will help them achieve global and a grand recognition. And this can be done with the help of communication audit. Now, how can we do it? This can be done with the communication audit process, who will find out the strengths and the weaknesses of the company and what has been bothering the entire process all along. E-communications audit determines both effective communication tools are including their strengths, weaknesses, and provides recommendation and improvement necessary for your communication plan to even work better. Today, communication is internationalized. With the coming of internet, we can do communication on the internet as with the help of the internet as well. Therefore, the term e-communication. So e-communication audit determines two things. One is how effective your communication tools are while providing their strengths and weaknesses, and also it provides the recommendations how to make it better. So it improves communication within the organization and it helps to build trust and commitment among the employees. So you can see that the entire process of communication audit is to carry out a strategic and a corresponding communication plan in achieving a communication objective. So this communication objective is proportional to what? It is proportional to the grant recognition of that particular brand, right? So e-communications audit or any communication audit will help you to determine both the effective communication, whether your communication tools are effective or not, including the strengths and the weaknesses that it is having, and provides recommendation and improvements necessary for your communication plan to even work better. It will give a proper identification that how this entire thing works, when the communication audit process is brought into existence. So it improves the communication within the organization and helps to build trust and commitment among employees. Next, we will move on to the communication audit procedure, how it is done. Okay, so this is the proper plan that we are talking about. First thing is identifying and setting the scope and framework. So to start, gain a thorough understanding of the organization and its strategy. So for example, you are the communication audit team. So as you are being introduced by the corporate communications team, the first thing is you need to do is to understand the organization in and out. There should be an entire transparent picture in front of you regarding the organization and its strategy. More specifically, find out the issues the auditor should be investigating and understand what are you trying to achieve. So once you have a particular transparent plan in front of you, the transparent organization and its strategies, you find out the issues in the communication process among the departments. And these issues are to be solved by the editor, which needs to be investigated by the auditor, and understand what are you trying to achieve. Your idea is to look after the fact what the company is trying to achieve with the help of this audit, with the help of the communication audit. So the first and foremost thing, or the first step, is identifying and setting up the scope and framework. Next is the discovery process. This step is basically focused on research. Primary research could include interviews, focus groups or surveys, etc. Secondary research will primarily view the paid, earned and owned media. So it is the discovery process. It is going to learn what are the mistakes that are going on inside the communication plan. It will interview each and every individual of a department and will ask that whether the communication between these two departments are well or not, how each of the people or employees behave to one another. So it is digging deep into the minds of the people to understand what the entire organization is up to. So that is the primary research that essentially includes interviews, focus group surveys, etc. And when we talk about the secondary research, we are talking about the paid, earned and owned media. So these are the first two steps: identifying and setting up scope and framework, and another is the discovery process. Next is the distillation process. In the distillation process, it involves assessing the collecting data. So after the interviews and the secondary process, everything is done. What you need to do, you need to assess the data that you have collected. At this point, it is important to identify the patterns of your research and drop the key insights. Once you identify what the problems are, you start drawing, insights that what are the problems of the entire organization. Next is interpretation. You finally identify the communication gaps and opportunities. Review areas like message quality, its delivery, the quality of relationship with the audience, and overall audience communication. So in this stage, what you are going to do is that you are identifying the weakness and the gaps and the opportunities of the communication between the in the organization. So the review areas are basically and essentially the message quality, its delivery, and quality of relationship with the audience and overall organization communication. And the last step is the evaluate past communication methods. This helps the company identify successful or not successful ways of communication performed previously. It also allows the company to understand if the target audience was reached and if the company trade the message they were hoping for. See, this point I can make you understand that, for example, you are a communication auditor, okay, that has been brought in by the corporate communications team. Now, before sitting down to make the entire plan, that how the strategic plan will be done, you need to think about one thing, that the person who was hired before you to do the communication audit of that particular company has done its entire procedure in a same manner but in a different style. You need to find out in what style he has conducted the communication audit to understand that, how the audience understands the entire way of communication audit, so that you get an idea how it has been done and you do not follow the same mistakes that has been committed by the previous individual. So this is the communication audit procedure. Here we are working in getting to know the strengths and the weakness and preventing the weakness of the communication procedure. Right? So this was the entire step of communication audit procedure. We had the identifying and setting up the scope and framework, the discovery process, and we had the distillation process where you assess the collected data. We had the interpretation level, where you do the where you identify the communication gaps and the opportunities, and we had the evaluation of the past communication method, one of the major and one of the most very important element in this communication audit procedure. Because see, as an individual, when you are studying the entire organization, you need to do this step in the very first thing. You need to study what has been already done. Right? So if you understand and study the work of the previous person who has worked in the same, under the same place, you will be having a complete idea about what it is, right? About how can it be done, how can it be more successful, what are the pitfalls that has been missed by the person who undertook this entire procedure into his consideration, how more you can improve them, and to an extent how the employees converse between each other, and everything falls under this entire strategic plan. Next, we have the benefits of communication audit. The benefits are, number one is conducting a communication audit shows the senior management that you think strategically. It gives a different image among the senior management. The audit interviews that you are taking enables you to find out the biggest perceived issues that managers believe that they faced, creating a great opportunity for you and to use communication to help solve these problems. Next is this encourages the managers to think more strategically about communication activities, and audits provide valuable data for developing and reconstructing the communication function. Audit can facilitate mid-course corrections to communication program, and valuable information can be uncovered about barriers, bottlenecks, and misunderstanding. So all the benefits of communication audit looks after one singular factor, is that how to make the communication better in an organization, right? How to maintain the entire communication more transparent in nature. Next, we will move on to the questioning part of our communications audit. The first question that I have with you is, in communication audit procedure, what technique is used? Options are A, service, option B, interviews, option C, quota sampling, and option D is phone interviews. So when I'm talking about communication audit procedure, this is essentially a part of the strategic plan. So if you are going to look deep into the companies, one technique that is essentially helps you to understand a better image of the company, and those are the interviews. So the audit interviews enables you to find out the biggest perceived issues that managers believe they faced, creating a great opportunity for you to use communication in solving those particular issues. So interviews will be the correct answer. Next question I have with you is, what determines the effectiveness of the communication tool? Options are A, e-commerce, option B, e-communications, option C, marketing, and option D, none of the above. So if you look into the factor of 21st century, everything has been under the arena of the internet or the new media that we can talk about. So in today's corporate communications and communication audit, we see that e-communications actually determines the effectiveness of a communication tool. So e-communication audit determines both how effective your communication tools are, including their strengths and weaknesses, and provides a proper recommendation and improvements necessary for your communication plan to even work better. So e-communication is the route to the effectiveness of your communication tool. So option B is your correct answer. Next question that I have with you is, who undertakes the entire procedure of communication audit? Options are A, PR department, option B, the crisis management department, option C, the consultancies, and option D is the corporate communication. Now, this question can be tricky because the answer is both consultancy and corporate communication. But you have to be very careful about the fact that since the audit or the communication in most of the organizations are done with the in-house department, in order to make it much more cost effective and not to, not to waste any more money, corporate communication department actually deals the entire procedure. But if any other company wants to use other consultancies' work, they can surely go ahead and do it. But when a question this confusing comes on it, one thing you can do is you can answer it as the corporate communications, because in most of the organizations, like big organizations, they usually use, the their in-house department. So corporate communications, option D is your correct answer. Next question that I have with you is, A dash is a comprehensive evaluation of an organization's ability to send and receive and share information with various audiences within the organization. So this is a fill in the blanks. The options are A, public relations, option B, corporate communications, option C, crisis management, and option D is communication audit. Therefore, the process that is the entire thing, that is a comprehensive evaluation of an organization's ability to send and receive information or share information with various audiences is communication audit. Option D is your correct answer. Next question that I have with you is, how many types of communication audit can be done within an organization? The options are A, 4, option B, 5, option C, 2, and option D is 3. So there are basically 2 types of audit that can be done in an organization. One is the internal audit that can be done among the employees, and the other is with the clients and the investors and the stakeholders. So there are two types of audits, internal and external, right? So with this, we come to the end of our presentation today, and that will be it for today's lesson. If you have any doubts or any problems regarding this, please let me know, and that will be it for today's class. Thank you so much.